right, looks like we have people joining pretty rapidly, so just going to give maybe 3 more minutes for people to jump on, and then we'll get going. And we've also, if people are, I'm going to be holding questions till probably the end of the slides, which hopefully will be in about the first half. So first 30 minutes, my goal is to get through all of the slides, all of that content, and then spend the second 30 minutes just talking through questions people have. So if people want to just get those into the chat now, and if people also want to just share some contact information, the government contracting market is extremely social. It's a part teaming and partnering game half the time. So if people want to share, LinkedIn profiles, by all means, please use this to your best advantage. Anyway, it looks like we've slowed down on new people joining the Zoom. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and get going, and then as people join, I will do my best to let them in. Great. So I'm going to share my screen then, and please let me know. Please let me know if you can see it. Here we are. Great. Can people see my screen? Somebody can give me some sort of feedback.
Yes, we can see it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah, I've got a note to myself to hit record. That has been done. So I'm starting with that going for me at the very least. All right. So first of all, thank you all so much for joining. I hope I imagine that most of you are new government contractors. And today I just wanted to share a couple reflections on NAICS and PSC codes. They're a little deviling. It's on the one hand, they can seem really fiddly and, like something you do when you do your SAM registration that you never have to think about again. But there are a lot of places where they can actually be helpful or hurt you if you don't know what you're doing. So in the first 30 minutes of this, I'm really just hoping to cruise through a bunch of content. I hope it's really actionable. Like I've really tried to make it channeled, catered to a new government contractor, focusing on how to do things, not spend a ton of time on big picture theory stuff that is probably better for another day. And then by all means, like I said, please put questions into chat, and I'll do my best to balance answering questions with getting through content. So with that kind of framing out of the way, so my name is Jeff Warzum. I've been in the government. I've been helping small government contracting companies for about a decade now. Happy to share more about my background probably at the end if people are interested. But yeah, I've been doing this for a few years now. So let's talk a little bit. Just want to share a little bit about what we're going to be discussing today. So first is going to be a really quick discussion of what these two systems are. And I've told myself that I'm going to avoid theory and really try to focus on how to do stuff and things that you can apply in your businesses today. But we just need to kind of level set about what these systems are and what they're all about. Second thing is how to find the right codes for your company. So I imagine a lot of you are just getting into it. You say, hey, I want to provide food service, janitorial services, cybersecurity. You want to sell something to the government. Well, how are we going to find the right codes for you? And then we're going to go through a couple of the kind of most common use cases. So using those codes to find contracts, to research your market, to understand, do you qualify as a small business? things like that. But that's the agenda for the day. So I'm just going to jump right in to keep, while I keep us on time and moving. So what are NAICS and PSC codes? Well, they're very similar. They're two overlapping, competing systems to help organize the world. And so both systems attempt to provide a code. Each code is different, but tries to provide a code to every product or service you can imagine. So I've just put up the list of the top level NAICS groupings. So there are 16 top level, big cluster level groupings of NAICS codes. And NAICS try to organize the world by the industry that they align to. So if I look at these, NAICS code 11 is agricultural, forestry, fishing, and hunting. So any product or service related to ag, forest, fishing, and hunting should be there. And then as you get more detailed, so as you go down in D, so as you add numbers, you get more specific. So if 11 is ag, forestry, fishing, and hunting, then 111 is crop production, fruits and trees, all the way down to 111.331 being apples. So as you add, so this is important for us because depending on how broad your company is, you might want to use different levels of code. So for example, if you're Monsanto or you're just like a mega agricultural conglomerate, well, you might want to focus on a code that's up here, like a double digit, like a big, that would be everything in the industry, because your company might be doing stuff that's spread across all different parts of that NAICS code. Or you might be a really small business, really focused, or pretty focused, and you just have orchards. You just provide fruits, and you want to start selling those fruits to the government. The government buys a lot of fruit. The DoD buys a lot of fruit for the troops, things like that. And you say, hey, but you grow a lot of different kinds of fruit. So maybe you're over here at 1113, because that would be all the different kinds of fruits and trees. Or you might say, no, I only do apples. And so you might be down here. And so finding the right level of detail can be helpful as you start thinking about, well, what code should I use when I'm doing some of the things we'll talk about here in just a minute around searching, market research, customer identification, being able to scale that code to where you are. Okay. So again, this is I'm hoping we'll get past theory real fast. We'll get into the what you're going to be doing here real soon. And then PSC codes are basically the same idea, except they don't use the industry to organize the world. They use kind of basically they divide the world by products, services, and R&D. And so if you see a PSC code that starts with a number, it's for that the government was buying a product. If the PSC code starts with an A, then that contract was for R&D. And if the PSC code starts with a B through Z, then the government was buying just a kind of traditional service. But it's the same basic idea, where at the very top level, like R, you got are all support services. Well, that's a huge variety. And then you get down more detailed. Now you get down to R701, which is just advertising services. So same idea, they start big and they go down and become more and more narrow. Cool. I just want to check the chat, see if people had asked any questions. Okay, great. So people are introducing themselves, which is awesome. Glad you guys are getting to know each other. Cool. All right. And by the way, if you have any questions, like I said, please throw them into chat. I'll do my best to answer them as we're going. But great. So first question a lot of new businesses have is, well, cool, how do I find the right NAICS and PSC codes for me? And I think there are basically three ways to do that. The first way, well, the first two ways really are using SAM. So here's what we're about to do this together as an example, but I just want to show you kind of on screen. So what typically will happen is you'll you'll do a keyword search. You say, hey, I've got a cybersecurity company. I've got a web development shop. I've got a whatever, construction company, whatever it is. Typically you'll know your own keywords. You'll put those in, and you're gonna get a whole list of results. In this case, in this example, I just did this last night. 505 results for cybersecurity. And then you can click into each of these items, into each of these results, and they'll show you the product and service code that goes with it. So you can start clicking through to start click, and see, okay, these are the codes that seem to align to the work I want to do. So, let's just do, we can do one together. Let's see if Sam logged me out. That looks like maybe it hasn't. Great. So if we're going to do this for real, so let's try it together. So we're going to say contract opportunities, and let's just say, for example, we provide janitorial services. Right. Okay. So we've got 616 results, and we can start going into this. So here we have swimming pool maintenance. Well, is janitorial really related to swimming pool maintenance? Maybe. Maybe for your company it is. Maybe that's part of what you do. But we got here, if we look at it, the NAICS code, other services to buildings and dwellings. All right, so that might be, you might say, hey, that's sort of an edge case. This 561790 might be a bit of an edge case for us. But you got, keep in the back of your mind, say, okay, that at least appeared once. And then on the PSC side, S201, housekeeping, custodial, janitorial. So, okay, so you have one vote, if you will, saying those are good, those are some NAICS codes for you. Then you can look at the next one, custodial. Same thing. You can look at the NAICS and PSC codes used. So, this is the simplest way to figure out what your NAICS codes are. But as you can imagine, I don't think anybody here wants to click through 616 different records and keep track of each one individually. So here's what I advise you do: is you come here to Actions, click Download as a CSV, which is just an Excel file. So great. So it came up. So we open up that file, and can everyone see the Excel file that I just opened? Looks like it might be paused. Let me see here. Let me see if I can reshare my screen so that y'all can see. All right, let's try that again. Can people see my Excel now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is the Excel download of all of those 616 SAM contracts that had the word janitorial somewhere in them. So if we highlight if we select everything, and then we add a pivot table. And by the way, I'm recording this to be able to share it with everybody. So, if you want, you'll be able to come back through and see everything I'm doing. And then we can come in here and say NAICS. We have the NAICS codes. We can then, we can put the notice ID here, and that gives us a count, and then sort it from largest to smallest. So we can see that the most common NAICS code for janitorial services, at least that sample, which is, probably is pretty representative, 477 of those 616 results were in this janitorial services NAICS code. And then, a reasonable number also appeared in facility support services. And then a few also appeared in lessors of non-residential buildings. Sorry, I'll blow up my screen a little bit. Lessors of non-residential buildings like mini warehouses. So, if we said, hey, between these top 3 NAICS codes, we've got just about everything. And then, if I look at like the other stuff here, like these one-offs, some of them are pretty, kind of odd choices, remediation, office administration. It's like, well, fair enough. I guess that could belong there, but there's a good chance it's going to actually be a bad match. So, but by doing this, all of a sudden we can very quickly see the most common NAICS codes that are in our space, and we can do the exact same thing with PSC codes. So we go to PSC, we add that instead. We come in, we sort it largest to smallest, and we can see, hey, these are the PSC codes where we're finding our kinds of contracts. And so we can write those down, and everything's great. So there's what's going on. There's sort of the 2 methods to find your NAICS and PSC codes using SAM. And this is not meant to be this is not because this is not a pitch for FedScout, but this is the product that we have for it. So you can put in something here. So I was playing around with it earlier today. So what we've done is basically what we just described. What we did, all of the things, all the math and all of the analysis that we just did together, we just did it, we just made it a lot more easier format. So if you come here to this link, and by the way, this is all free. You come in here to this link, you put in your keyword, and it shows you, well, what are the most common NAICS codes, what are the most common PSC codes, or these are all in order of frequency. And you can just come in here and say, okay, these are the ones that, look right to me, save them, and you can create, you just name a search, janitorial, and then boom, you now have a janitorial services search that you can use, for anything else you do. Cool. So that's how you do it in FedScout. All right. Great. Now that we have our NAICS and our PSC codes, let's talk about the primary way that people use these. The kind of number one way that you're going to use this to help your business is to look for promising contracts. Okay. And first of all, I want to just spend a minute talking about why we need to use codes at all. Because, I mean, like, in what other part of our life would we use a code to help us find something? If you go on Google and you want to look up, I don't know, you want to look up something about sports, something about politics, whatever it is that you're interested in, you don't use a code, you just put in words, like normal humans. But we're in government land here, and this system was not designed by humans for humans. It was designed by lawyers for lawyers. So the reason I'm talking about this is I just wanted you to understand why keyword searches can sometimes be problematic. So here's the example. So I just did a search right before this class for cybersecurity. I got a lot of bad matches, and here's why. So check out this contract that got returned. It's a construction contract for an army lodge somewhere in Germany, but it got returned as a cybersecurity contract because they talk about cybersecurity facilities being needed as part of the construction of this lodge. So, if you do physical cybersecurity, putting, foil and, hardened pipes around data transmission wires, well, cool. Maybe this is a good contract for you. But for 99% of people, the presence of this word cybersecurity is going to lead you astray. It's going to lead you to get lots of bad matches. And this is a really common problem, largely because the government loves to put regulations into their contracts or into their solicitations. So it's very common to see a solicitation that's 100 pages long. 80 of those pages are just copy and paste from government regulations. And it's super annoying, right? Because, number one, you're trying to find like the actual part of the contract saying what the government wants to buy, and you're having to read page after page about whatever it is, whatever government laws are being documented here. Well, a lot of government regulations talk about cybersecurity. They talk about equal opportunity employment. They talk about HR. They talk about environmental regulations, all of these things that if you're doing keyword searches will cause those to pop up. So as a way to avoid getting these bad matches, we can go ahead and add a NAICS code or a PSC code. So here's an example of, here's just another example of what this can look like. So I did a search for cybersecurity with no NAICS or PSC codes, and look at some of the stuff I was getting. Reverse osmosis water treatment services, fire station support building services, cranes operator services, stuff that's pretty far off. Then I added some of the NAICS and PSC codes that are relevant to that are associated with cybersecurity. And I add those, and all of a sudden it got rid of all of these because water treatment services isn't going to get it may have the word cybersecurity in it, but the government isn't going to use the cybersecurity kind of like IT computer-oriented codes for that. They're going to use a utilities NAICS code for this one, for the fire support building services, they're not going to use a IT NAICS code. They're going to use a building management or a facilities management type code for this one. So that's one of the ways that, by adding a NAICS code, we can really improve the quality of our search results. And what that looks like, and we're about to do one together. So actually, tell you what, let's just do it together. Let's just skip the example. If I can click, there we go. Okay, so if we just started over again, so let's do one that maybe has a little good. Janitorial services is very specific here. You're probably going to get good matches. So let's use cybersecurity. Okay, and here's a great example. It's like, this is beds. They want to buy, the Department of Veterans Affairs wants to buy, it looks like cots, and yet it got returned on a cybersecurity search. Like, that's clearly wrong, right? So we have, so something, and then we have like insight program support. We have, if we just look at a lot of these things, are they really cybersecurity? Like constructing, there's the constructing the Army Lodge that we just looked at. So you can see there's just a lot of stuff in here that's a bad match. So what we can do in here is come in here under product or service information, and then we can actually add the codes that make sense for us. So, we can go in here and say, professionals. So let's say we just wanted, we find that the codes for us are somewhere here. And we can start getting more and more dialed in. So, and by the way, one really annoying thing is that, like, for example, check this out. So we type in cyber, nothing comes up. We type in professional, nothing comes up. So the SAM system is broken because, like, look right there, professional. It's clearly there, but if we type it in, it won't find it. So this is why you actually have to know the individual numbers for the codes. So, but for this example, we added the code, the 5.4. It's the general code, but it's the correct code for where most of the IT and cyber activities live. And all of a sudden we went down to, from I think it was 260 results to 140. And they start looking really, but a lot of them start looking a little bit more online, program support, identity management, cybersecurity. So maybe, but if we start providing even more specific NAICS codes, like here, let's leave like computer system design. So we went from like the 5.4 very general NAICS code, improved our results, but they were still had some bad matches. Let's get a little bit more specific. We go 5.4.1.5 computer design. Okay, identity management, cybersecurity and privacy support services, compliant connect integration. Now we start getting stuff that looks real good because we got by adding a more specific NAICS code that was more specifically aligned to what we do, we got more specific results. So let's check chat, see if there's a question there. Why is it better to start off with the first two numbers, then drill down to 6 digits? Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. There is no better reason to start with 2 digits. I was just starting with 2 digits just to illustrate that by going from no NAICS code, where we were getting kind of everything, crazy results, by adding a 2-digit NAICS code, we got better results, but we were still getting stuff that was in that 5.4 NAICS code. That weren't necessarily well aligned, and then we went down to a 4-digit NAICS code, and all of a sudden we started getting really well aligned results. So if you know your 4-digit, if you know your 6-digit NAICS code, just drop that in straight off the bat. I just started with 2 digits to illustrate the point. Yeah, awesome. But yeah, great questions. Please keep asking. But cool. So that's how we can use NAICS codes to improve our search results. Great. Cool. The next most common way that people use NAICS codes is in market research. This is you're trying to look for customers, you're trying to size your market. And the best place I think to do this is at usaspending.gov. Wonderful website, top 3 government websites. And basically what you do is you drop in your NAICS codes, you download the data, and then you can run some pivot tables based on that data to figure out who your customers are. So let's go ahead and do that together. Cool. So here we are. I'm at USA Spending. Go to the advanced search. under advanced search, you can come down here to the NAICS codes. And then, you know, and actually the autocomplete here does work. So if we do janitorial, we can actually see janitorial. Let's just say, you know, for this example, we're doing janitorial services. You know, just in the interest of getting through this quickly, I'm just going to choose one last year, just so that we don't have a ton of data to have to wade through. But, you know, in real life, if you're doing this for yourself, you know, I'd probably choose the last 4 or 5 years so you can get a little bit broader view. And we submit search. Great. Here, there looks like there are about 7,154 awards related to janitorial services. And then we're going to go ahead and download that. And for your level, I recommend you do awards rather than transactions. Download everything, and then boom, there it is. So it's downloading. While it's downloading, just want to explain why we didn't use keywords here. Overall, I think that USA Spending is a wonderful website, and I sing its praises all the time. The one place where it really falls down is that it doesn't contain the text of different solicitations. So like all of this great text that tells you about what's going on that you can use for keyword search, that all gets stripped away when the data gets moved over into this system. So you'll hear this system called FPDS or USA Spending. They're technically different systems, but USA Spending is like the modern interface for FPDS. There are some other differences, but for the purposes of this conversation, just consider them to be the same. Okay, but great. So we just downloaded the 2022 information about for all the awards that were coded to be janitorial services, because we want to do some research. Great. So we grab into my downloads, open up the file. Cool. And the file that we're going to look for is this one, Contract Prime Award Summaries. We're going to open that up. And I know this looks super dense and it is super complicated, but we're only going to look at a couple fields for this market research, for kind of like this introductory level market research. So select all your data, insert pivot table, and then, sorry, just move that. Here's what we're going to be looking for. Sorry, let me just blow this up a little bit so it's easier for you all to see. Here's what we're going to look for is funding. What we're looking for is the funding sub-agency name. And funding, the sub-agency, just to help us organize, we'll put in both. We'll put in funding agency and funding sub-agency. So, and what we'd like to see here maybe is, oh my gosh, obligations. There we go, total obligated amount. So what we've just done here, and again, this will be in the recording that gets shared, so you can kind of play along at home as you're doing this for if you want to go do this for yourself, is these are all the awards. Technically what I just said isn't true. It's not technically all the awards. It's a little bit, but for the purposes of identifying customers, what I just said is close enough to being accurate. What I just said is accurate. It's not quite precise. Like if you're a government data geek like me, there's like people like me get spun up around like, oh, is it actually all the award data or is it just a sample? Anyway, for your purposes of like identifying customers, trying to size your market, this is close enough. It's going to be able to allow you to say, okay, hey, I want to see who are the big spenders over, in my industry. And I can see it's like, well, okay, wow. Department of Agriculture, specifically the U.S. Forest Service, spent about $48 million last year on janitorial services. That's pretty good. Department of the Army spent about 1.1 billion on janitorial. Air Force about 530-ish million. So it allows you to start identifying those organizations that you should go target and to be able to say, hey, is there a big enough market opportunity here for me to care? So that's how we do market research using NAICS codes and PSC codes. And we'll be doing another class that does a much deeper dive on market research. There's a lot more you can do here, like narrow in on your market. But today we're just trying to focus on how you use NAICS codes for different applications, NAICS and PSC codes. So that's how you use them here. Awesome. All right, next. determining whether you're a small business. So this sounds weird, but you could be in small businesses for the purposes of one contract and not for another. And here's what's going on there. In order to know if you're a small business, you need to know how big you are, and you have to know what the size cutoff is for small for that particular contract. And that's determined by the NAICS code. So if we look at this, I just did a copy out of the NAICS code manual, and which you can download right here. We'll have the slides to you after this call. So here are the NAICS codes, and you can see, so at the small end down here, if you have a poultry hatchery, if you have a chicken farm, the cutoff is $4 million a year. On the other hand, if you do forest fire suppression, the cutoff is $34 million a year. And by and large, the cutoff between large and small is based on dollars of revenue. But for a few of them, it's based on your employment. So if you see this was over here, the number of employees, 500 for logging, that basically is like, so instead of looking at your revenue to decide if you're large or small, they're going to look at your total employment to determine whether you're large or small. And so to help explain what this means, let's look at an example of how this happens. So imagine you're an agricultural services company, and your revenue is 25 mil. You're looking at two different contracts. Contract one is in NAICS 11.5, and that has a small business standard of a 19 million. You're also looking at a contract, 11.5, 11.4, which has a size standard of 34 million. So for the purposes of this contract, of contract one, you're a large business. For the purposes of contract two, you're a small business. And this can be important if either of these are set aside. So imagine this, so imagine this contract was set aside for small business. Well, you're not a small business for the purposes of this contract, so you can't be the prime. You could be a subcontractor on it, but you can't be the prime. Whereas when you're bidding on this contract, if it's also set aside for small business, or set aside for woman-owned small business, or veteran-owned small business, whatever it is, you do qualify as small, so you can prime. So you'll hear people say, hey, I'm a small business in these NAICS codes. That's what they're talking about. And figuring out if you're small, try to figure out, hey, what is my revenue? What is my employment for the purposes of figuring out if you're small or not? It gets a little complicated, but if you're truly new, if you just started your business the last couple of years and you've got less than $1 million in revenue, you're small. Don't worry about it. Don't stress. You're small. If you're coming to the federal market from the commercial industry and you've got a few $1 million in revenue and you want to make sure that you want to really understand this, basically here's what you do: is you take your past 3 years of headcount and include everybody, 1099s, part-times, consultants, put them all in, take your revenue for the last 3 years, take the average of your revenue, take the average of your employment, and then you're going to compare those numbers to these standards. And if you're less than half of the standard, don't sweat it, you're small. Just move on, you're small. If you're starting to come near the edge and you're like, I'm getting a little close to that size threshold, you might as well talk to an accountant or a lawyer. There's a lot of fiddly tricks you can do about how you move and how you recognize the revenue, how you recognize the head count. But you don't want to, break the law. You don't want to break the regulations. Talk to an accountant or a lawyer if you're close. But that's how you figure it out. So that's how you figure it out. And, that's in the reactive posture. But this allows, but what we just talked about, where you can be different, you can be small for certain contracts and not for others, creates a really interesting offensive opportunity to help you win more work. And this is called shaping. And shaping is sort of like advanced level government contracting. But you'll hear a lot of people, if you go to conferences, if you go to trade associations, chambers of commerce, where a lot of GovCons there, you'll hear people talking about this. So I just want you to know what it is, even though you probably won't be doing it for a couple of years. But shaping is just everything that you can do to influence the government in ways that help you out. And the choice of NAICS codes is one of those ways to shape. So let's walk through an example. And again, there's a lot of stuff about how you do this that gets pretty complicated, not complicated, but I know that I'm telling you about something and there are a lot of questions are like, well, how do I do this? And there'll be other classes on that. But right now I just want to introduce you to the concept more so that when you hear people talk about shaping, you know what they're talking about. So imagine this scenario. Your business for the purposes of this 3-year average, you're a $21.5 million a year company. You provide marketing services. You know, through your connections, through friends of friends, that the government is considering buying a contract for marketing services or putting out a contract for marketing services. You know, through these same connections, that they're planning on setting it aside for small business. And you happen to know the government officer who's running this acquisition. You know, maybe you've worked together in the past, you've won a contract with them before in the past, or you're teamed up with another company who knows that government officer. Or maybe the government just put out a sources out or an RFI. They've asked industry for their input on this contract. Well, this gives you the opportunity to influence the government. And let's see how influencing the NAICS code could help you. So these are all NAICS codes related to advertising and marketing services. So plausibly, the government could choose any of these. They could choose any of these NAICS codes and assign it to the solicitation they're considering doing. But the one they choose is going to have a big impact on you. So check it out. If the government chooses any of these bottom 3 NAICS codes, well, the size threshold is smaller than you, and the contract gets set aside, and you're out of luck. You are blocked from being the prime on this contract because it's set aside for small business, and in these NAICS codes, you are not a small business. Okay, that's bad. So you should be talking to that government officer saying, hey, government, do not use these 3 NAICS codes. On the other hand, you have these top 4 NAICS codes, these ones in orange. And these are good, but they're not great. And here's why. So let's say that you are a $21.5 million company. Let's say the government chose this 541850 display advertising. The size limit there is $34.5 million. So you could potentially be competing against companies that are a lot bigger than you, like $12 million bigger. That's more than half again bigger than you. And it's never a good thing if you can avoid it to compete against bigger companies. They just have a lot more resources at their disposal to help them win. So what you really want is for the government to choose one of these NAICS codes in green. Because if the government chooses one of those NAICS codes in green, you are just barely small, which means that you're almost definitely going to be the largest company in that NAICS code. You're going to be the largest company bidding for that contract. And that's a great place to be. You want to be the biggest fish of all the companies that can potentially bid. Sorry, Angie, great question. So Angie asked, are these size limits the same across the board or do they vary by agency? Great question. They are the same across the board. So it doesn't matter if you're bidding a contract at EPA or DOD or Architect of the Capitol, does not matter. These standards here are going to be the same. So please let me know if that answers your question. I think it does, but if it doesn't answer your question, please follow up in chat. Okay, cool. So that's how you can influence a contract in your favor. Just open chat back up. Yep, great, awesome, you're welcome. Cool. So I'm going to fly through these next 3 elements because they're really straightforward. Cool. So contract compliance and NAICS codes. So here we go. So when you register in SAM, before you can win a contract in a NAICS code, that NAICS code has to be part of your SAM profile. So generally, this is really easy. Just go and take all of the NAICS codes that you identified as part of your NAICS code research, and add them to your SAM profile. There's nothing in the world worse than winning a contract, like taking the time, build a proposal, take the time, build your everything, put in your proposal, you win, and then have that award yanked away from you because you didn't have that NAICS code in your SAM profile. So just add them. Next time you're in SAM, add all the NAICS codes you think that might have a contract that you'd want to go after. Great. Also, one of the benefits of this is the next point, which is helping you be discovered by prime contractors. So there's a website called DSBS. I have it pulled up right here. DSBS, the Dynamic Small Business Search. Basically, when you create your SAM profile, all the information about your company is going to get pulled into this system as well. So, and this is a tool that is specifically designed to help government agencies and contractors find other companies to work with. So they can come down here and say, okay, hey, we're looking for companies to work with in this area. They've popped that NAICS code in. They search, and they're going to be able to find, they can also, there's a lot more features to be able to search by, locations and size and stuff like that. But, again, this class is just on NAICS codes. So they search for the NAICS code and they get companies they could potentially work with. Just between us, I've never heard of somebody finding a partner or being reached out to because of their small business, their DSBS profile, but it's no extra work on your part. You got to put it in SAM anyway. So it's just one more place that it'll pop up. And then the last is around how you use these on your marketing material. So in general, recommend putting your NAICS codes on the back of your business cards and on your capability statements. Just between us, I don't think anyone ever reads the NAICS codes. Everyone sort of knows the NAICS codes in their ecosystem, but I've never seen someone at a cocktail party or one of these receptions be you're a 541511. Let's talk about doing business. That just never happens. People just read the content over here on the main body of your capability statement. But here's why it's important is, every industry, every club, every community sort of has their own language. And if people use that language incorrectly, or they're not using those words, you're sort of you're new here. It's having your NAICS code on your business card or on your capability statement is sort of a little bit of a wink to everybody else that hey, I know what's up. I've been around the block a couple times. I know that this is something I'm supposed to do, so I did it. So it's more social signaling value than it is substantive value. But that was my flying discussion of NAICS codes and how to use them to help you with your business. Real quick pitch for FedScout. I ran an incubator for GovTech companies for about a decade. We found that the other tools on the market just weren't meeting the needs of our members because all of this stuff, they didn't know how to use NAICS codes, find NAICS codes, manage NAICS codes. So we just built a suite of tools to help people answer their own questions fastest and most conveniently. So you can search, you can evaluate, you can identify contracts, identify partners, everything you can do on SAM. By the way, FedScout is free for most people. If you want some of the more fancy stuff, there's a monthly subscription, but for most of y'all, the free subscription is going to be just fine. So that's my presentation, and looks like we've got about 15 minutes for questions. So please, if anybody has any questions, come off mute or drop them in the chat. Cool. And if not, I'm going to be trying to do these every week, probably starting in mid-March. We'll start doing this as a weekly series. So we'll be sending out emails to people with other topics. And yeah, please, we would love to have you come. We'd love to see you again. Yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad. Yeah. Christina, you're very welcome. That was my goal here, was to try to, demystify, just be real pragmatic about, the basics and, in an accessible way. So, and by the way, if people have requests for other classes, please put them into chat. We're looking for other things to to talk about. Drew, please, feel free to come off. Can you come off mute?
Yes, sir.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Hey, so really good. I appreciate I'm real big on bottom line up front. And so thanks for doing this for your slides, man. Real quick, maybe I missed it. So what's the specific difference between NAICS codes versus PSC codes?
Yeah.
Because there are PSC codes that apply to me as well as NAICS, but I'm a little hesitant to deal with PSC because I believe that's a little more something that I'm physically giving to a customer, or no?
Yeah.
Versus NAICS is like a service, somewhat in some cases.
So good question. So here's what I would say is I personally think that the PSC system is the superior system. And the reason why is because they divide between products and services. So I'm going to share my screen just to help illustrate this example. Great. Can you see my screen again?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. So let's say, for example, you sell, I don't know, car engines or parts for car engines. You sell mechanical stuff.
Okay.
Well, where should that belong here? Among all of these groups? Well, I mean, it could be in transportation because engines and engine parts go in cars and trucks, and that's transportation oriented. But they're also used in manufacturing because engines power manufacturing equipment. But if you sell one engine, you're selling it in retail. If you're selling lots of engines, you're selling them in wholesale. So my point about my issue with the NAICS codes is that there's so much overlap between where things could live. And similarly, like imagine this, imagine you are searching in the 11 series NAICS codes. Well, the baskets to catch the apples that you pick and services to provide, I don't know, anti-bug insecticides on the apples would all be in the same NAICS code because they don't differentiate between products and services. So for all of those, I just think the PSC system is divided in a much cleaner way so when I'm doing research for clients, when I'm doing research for my own business, when I'm looking for contracts, I pretty much only use PSC codes just because I think for me, for whatever reason, like intellectually, the way they divide the world and the way I think about what I provide align much more closely. Unfortunately, nobody agrees with me. Like everybody else in the industry, government side, the vendor side, everybody else focuses on NAICS codes. So my advice to you, to answer your question very specifically, choose one or the other. The place where I see people get sideways is if they include like 10 NAICS codes and like 2 PSC codes, because all of a sudden, from a computer matching perspective, you only get results that match on both, that have one of those NAICS codes and have one of those 2 PSC codes. And in my experience, like all of a sudden you start missing a ton of good opportunities. So my advice would be just choose one or the other, whichever one seems like you get the best. Try with both. Like play around with like your top 6 NAICS codes, reset your search, try your top 6 PSC codes, see which one seems to be, and your keywords. See which one seems to be delivering the better, and then just use that. Right. But on your business cards, on your capability statements, it's got to be NAICS codes. People, for reasons that I don't agree with, people just don't like PSC codes.
No. And it's the same thing for Sam. Recommend putting NAICS and PSC in there, or it's just
exactly. Yeah. Just choose one. Just choose one.
Well,
I'm sorry. For your SAM corporate registration, like when you're filling out your SAM profile,
yes, sir.
It's got to be your NAICS.
Okay, gotcha.
There is a field to fill in your PSC codes if you want.
Yes.
That's awesome. Go ahead. There's no harm in doing that. There's no downside to adding your PSC codes in your profile, but the one you've got to do is the NAICS codes in your profile. what I'm saying is for like, if you're just searching for contracts, if you're doing market research, if you're doing stuff to then
It's
choose
one or
one
the
or
other.
the other, I generally would recommend not doing both there.
Yes, sir. Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Cool. Any other questions? Sorry. Sorry, I'm just looking at reading the thanks for the tips. You're very welcome. Topics for review is making sure that profile is set up correctly. Yeah, great idea. Love that. Will the Zoom recording be available? Yes, it will. As soon as we stop, I'm going to upload it to YouTube and we'll send the link around. The section to identify which agency's department is buying should be in a class on its own as well. Extremely useful. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Angela, agree. Yeah, we're gonna have to do a class just on market research because that's a full hour just on market research. I know we zipped through that real fast. Awesome. Appreciate it. It's very wonderful. So yeah, no, I see that we've got, just like I said, I'm happy. I'm scheduled through 12, so I'm happy to hang out, just answering questions, reviewing, if you want me to go deeper into any pieces that we didn't get a chance to, if you have that we didn't get as much detail on as you'd like, happy to go back to it. Also, I know everyone's busy, so feel free to jump off if that's easier. All right. Wonderful. Angie, you're very welcome. Thanks for coming. Yeah, thank you, Drew. It'd be a pleasure. Excellent. Cool. Looks like all the questions have been asked. So hope everyone has a great day. And yeah, and look forward to seeing you in a future class. Bye.